So here we are, podcast Ducks That Go Cold Feet, number 5 with James Winslow, professional race car driver. You've probably done a lot of things, which hopefully we'll hear about today. But firstly, welcome to Adelaide.
Thank you. It's
and
good to be here.
What were you here for?
So we're here for the Asia Le Mans series. Round 2 of the championship was in Adelaide at the Bend on the big 7.7 kilometre circuit. We just finished our race last weekend.
So it was a bit of an eventful weekend for you?
It was, yeah. We had a few car issues. I think I got 7 laps in total for the whole weekend, so it's lucky that I'd been around the circuit before. The race didn't go 100% our way. I was here racing with my European team, guys I raced with at Le Mans 24 Hour this year. And it wasn't a great start to our Asia Le Mans series campaign, but we've got 2 more rounds, one in Malaysia in 2 weeks' time and then Thailand, so hopefully we can have a better showing.
So basically, if you actually win the Asia Le Mans series, you get a ticket into the 24-hour Le Mans?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, the big race in June, the Le Mans 24-hour. If you win European Le Mans series, Asia Le Mans series or American Le Mans series, then the team wins. I think the top 2 teams win their ticket to the 24-hour.
Instead of paying to get in?
Yeah, well, it's an invite-only process.
Okay.
So there's 60 entries a year for that big, probably the world's biggest race. 60 entries. I think 20 or 30 of them qualify from winning races and championships throughout the season. And then if you're a WEC full-time competitor, then you get an automatic entry. So most teams miss out on the opportunity unless they've won a series.
Okay, so it's a lot more to it, and it's amazing that actually chose the Bend to come to for the first time outside of Asia.
Yeah, it was fantastic to come to Australia, as you say, the first time outside of Asia. All the European teams travelled all the way from Europe to Australia, which is obviously double the distance to most of the circuits they go to for Asia Le Mans series. But I think everyone really enjoyed it. The track's fantastic to drive. I think it was a good decision from the organisers to come all this way.
And it was fair to say, I spoke to a few of the drivers. Everyone seemed very impressed with the
drivers
facility.
Loved it. Yeah, you've got Formula 1 drivers, Le Mans 24-hour race winners. Drivers from every discipline in motorsport. Gave the track a big praise. They really enjoyed it. Yeah,
and it was actually a pretty good event. It was good to go out and had reasonably good weather considering the weather that we have had. So we've either been burning or fires, or we've actually been raining. So no rain here at the moment. We've had just small bits of rain, but...
Well, it rained on the Friday briefly. We missed one of the FP1 sessions for rain, but at least it wasn't 40 to 45 degrees. I think it was like 25 to 30 for the rest of the weekend, so the weather was really good. So
it dropped down to perfect. So I guess, I can hear an accent there. I would probably want to go back to whereabouts were you born? And, what started you? Was it always race car driving, or was it always wanting to drive things fast, or that just happened to be? What sort of was your turn of events from a kid?
So, born in England, London, Walthamstow originally. Moved to Essex when I was young. My dad was an amateur racing driver. Used to race in Formula Ford at Brands Hatch and always followed the Formula 1. So from a very young age, he was always taking me to Le Mans and Silverstone and Brands Hatch for the Formula 1 races. So I was kind of addicted by the age of 6. He started me in karting when I was 9. And then, I've been racing ever since. 36 now. So I think my first race, I was 11. So it's kind of like taken over my entire life ever since then. It's kind of what I do now. I don't know too much else.
So it was from the age of 9. Is that what you said started to kart?
Yeah, my first kart was at 9 years old, yeah.
So that is obviously your father. You went to watch your father and seeing things that he was doing?
I think, no, he actually gave up his racing when I was born. He couldn't afford a child and a racing car, so he gave up when I was born, and then was obviously still into racing a lot. And I guess I'm living his dream at the moment. Yeah,
and that is an interesting dream, because anyone that knows anything about motorsport, it doesn't matter how good you are, it's expensive.
It is expensive, to get your foot in the door and to get out there and show professional teams that you're good enough to be employed one day. You have to spend an awful lot of cash to promote yourself and learn and get the experience that's going to make you a professional driver one day.
So, being your first event from the age of 9, how were you when you started racing? Did you have some talent, or did you believe you let that talent along the way?
That's a good question. I think so. I think in England, they have like your first 6 races you have classed as like a P plate here, a black plate over there. So I won my first race. I think there was only 5 people in my class, but I won the first race, got my first trophy. And I think I got an advert in an article in the local paper. So it's kind of from that very first race win. That very first race was where it all started, and you kind of get addicted to the success. Yeah. And then you keep pushing for more and more. And then when karting ran out, wasn't 100% sure how I was going to move into cars. But managed to find a local sponsor from a local pizza company, which helped.
Pizza bar.
A pizza, yeah. And
so what age were you then?
I was 17. First race was in 16. Picked up my sponsor when I was 17 when I got my driving license, and I became the local pizza delivery boy, sponsored on my race car by the pizza company, and delivering the pizzas.
Are you serious? What was the pizza place called?
It was called Mum Adele's Pizzas in Whittam, Essex.
That's classic. So you actually were delivering pizzas.
Yep.
And then scored a sponsorship for your actual... What car was that back then?
It was back in Formula Ford, so I started racing at the Silverstone Racing School, which I then went on to work at. I won the championship in 2000. And you start to see the drivers that you were at the race school with, and some went on to be world champions and Formula One drivers. So, it was a good schooling, and it was... it was good to get that first sponsor off the ground, the pizza company that helped me make it all happen.
So Silverstone, pretty amazing racetrack when you're talking, a lot of history with the racetrack at Silverstone.
Yeah, I went on to move up there in the end and became an instructor. And as much as I was racing, couldn't really afford to take it all the way to Formula 3 or Formula 1, which was the ultimate goal. So started to work as an instructor at Silverstone, Brands Hatch, moved to Silverstone, working 7 days a week, and actually learnt my trade, sat in the passenger seat of Ferraris and Vipers and coaching guys on birthday presents and racing school. Actually learnt my trade from the passenger seat and from looking at the data and the video. So rather than going out testing and getting my dad into his overdraft, I sort of learnt it from and earned some money learning from the passenger seat.
So when you were out there, you're talking, late teens here, so early 20s when you started to actually get into that role?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
So you predominantly stayed in the UK or in...
Yeah, I was there. I left the UK in 2007, came to Australia, had an Australian career, went back to America, had a life and an Indy career, Indy Lights and Atlantics and a bit of IndyCar, Champ Car in America. Went back to Europe, raced in Europe, and eventually came back to Australia again. So I've been in I think I've raced in every continent.
You've almost raced in every category of car too, by the looks of it.
Yeah, I've been quite fortunate, yeah.
Not only that you've won a few championships along the way. Did you race in the A1 league? Yeah,
I represented Great Britain in A1 GP back in 2007 and 8. Yeah, until it folded, which was a shame because it was a really good series. It was the World Cup of Motorsport, and it was Australia versus Great Britain, New Zealand, all the countries in a Olympic-style competition. It
was a great series to watch.
Yeah, it was really good,
That was really good racing.
It was a shame it collapsed. I'm not sure how or why it did actually, because it had a big fan base.
Yeah, I got a jacket from that.
Yeah, the cars were great to drive as well.
I don't know how I picked up, but I've got a green and got an Australian team jacket and it's a cool jacket too.
Yeah.
But it's a pity that's no longer around.
Colours. They were great cars as well. They were actually Ferrari Formula 1 cars from 2005. Chassis was Michael Schumacher's last championship win in a Ferrari. Exactly the same cars, just with a slightly detuned engine. I think they were 100 horsepower less than the F1 cars were. And it was all run by Ferrari. So it was a really good experience there for the 6 months before it folded.
What was that? Only 6 months, was it? It was a year.
Yeah, they had the Lola. They had,
okay.
Like Formula 3000 chassis and cars with Zytec engines. And then in the final year, they upgraded to the Ferrari, which ultimately, I think, put it under.
So funny about that. So when did you realise, at what stage of the game did you think, I want to do this as a living?
I think from the day dot, really.
Yeah.
From those early days going to Brands Hatch, really, which was our local circuit where I used to live in Essex with my dad. Yeah, I was kind of 100% hard set on being a racing driver.
So there and then?
Yeah.
And your dad, what sort of support was is your mum around or?
Yep, mum and dad. Mum and dad were both massively supportive. Dad used to give up every single weekend to take me to the go-kart track. I don't think we really thought it was ever going to turn into a professional career. We're a very working class family, so the funds were tough to come by. But yeah, I just put 100% in and always believed I could make it. Now I look back, I've realised maybe that was a bit optimistic at the time, but if you keep following your dreams and never giving up, it seemed to come off. And I've been very fortunate to have travelled the world, and I think we've won 9 titles now. And
yeah, you've won quite a few. Well, you've won quite a few championships as well. And currently, I've got you as an LMP3 champ at the moment.
Yeah, we won the title this year, LMP3 series in Asia, and a GT3 title for Mercedes also this year in Asia.
What's the FRD series?
That's an Asian-based series. They bought, I think, 20 LMP3 cars, and they basically, have had pro drivers. It's been going for 3 years now. They got a whole bunch of pro drivers from all over the world. And we do battle against each other basically.
So when you look at how you've just, you obviously had some good backing from your dad and mum to support you to actually give you a chance at that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my dad, mum and dad put everything in really, which in the beginning wasn't too much, and then if I was fortunate enough and dedicated enough to win some races, and then it kind of, once you start winning some races in Europe and England, it was like being on the crest of a wave, and it just sort of kept carrying me on. And I was fortunate enough to get some good PR with a couple of incidents that happened around me.
Yep. So, one of the did you win a F3?
Yeah.
The British
Yep.
F3?
2004, I won the British series.
Yep.
And then I went on, and that led to, in fact, winning the British series in 2004. That's kind of what started my career, really. So I was in a Class B car, and we won the championship outright. And then I got an offer to come to Asia. There was a big sponsor in Asia that put me in the car, so I didn't have to find the £500,000 or whatever it is to do like another season of F3. I won that series in Asia. That led on to coming to Australia to do the Melbourne F1 support race. Managed to win a race there with Bruno Senna winning the other race. So he was a high-profile F1 driver to be in the next couple of years. So that was another good profile builder, and that led to me then coming to Australia, winning a couple of Australian F3 championships. And yeah, I think in total now we've won 86 Formula 3 races in my career, and we won 4 titles in F3. So
that's an amazing result.
That was a good apprenticeship then. You can always, when you fail in your next step, or the money dries up, or offers weren't there, it was always good to fall back on my F3 career. And that sort of led to me driving NASCAR and Champ Car and IndyCar and GP2 and LMP cars at Le Mans 24 Hour.
Do you find the changing from the cars, I mean, you're talking about open wheelers to NASCAR, do you find that they are very different in the way that they're driven?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's like every single car has got like a different driving style. So when I was a young kid and I thought I was quick and I was winning races in F3, I thought, that's it, I've got it nailed now, I'm going to F1. I've got the style. And then the following year, driving different cars, and I realised that there is a lot to learn. And I was, just in the early days of what I needed to know to be a professional racing driver. Again, going back to the coaching and the instructing, I could then relate, change my styles, and had to learn how to drive all these different types of cars. And it's very different compared to like a Formula 1 car to drive in, or an F3 car compared to a V8 supercar. The driving style is 100% different, a bit like being a break dancer compared to a ballet dancer.
That's an interesting way to look at them.
Very different, yeah.
Even like the Wolf, I'm driving a Wolf GB, and I used to have the West before that, and driving the Radical. I mean, they kind of look the same, those cars, but they all drive
styles are
very different.
Yeah. Even if you have the same car on a different tyre,
there's
a different driving style to get the most out of it. You can drive any car one way and be 80% there, but that last 15-20% comes down to a very particular style. So
with you, I've noticed you're actually really good at being able to get an amateur like me and say, this car's doing this, like where I can't quite explain to you what, I can tell you what it's doing, but you can sit there and go, that's because it's oversteering, understeering, or you're catching it, or you've always got another reason for it. I think because that's all I've done since I was 9. You end up sort of being able to tune into the car and seeing what's going on. So, for example, yourself, when we've been working together, when
you're on pole position at Eastern Creek last year, or setting your lap record here at the Bend on the international track.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I can see you can drive and you've got the driving skills. And then there's just a few extra little areas that my experience of 20 years can sort of like help me tune into the car, or set the brake bias, or see if it's like slight understeer into oversteer or the opposite, and help to tune the setup of the car as well.
Well, I mean, I've noticed that, and let's face it, it's amazing how many seconds I've pulled off my times solely because of the coaching.
Yeah, it can help. I mean, I've been lucky enough to work with F1 engineers, race against F1 drivers in my life, and you do learn a lot when you're driving with the very best in the world. And then when you come to like a local series in Australia or national series in Australia, yeah, you've kind of learnt some things over those years, hopefully, that you can pass along and help others.
Well, you came into you came into the picture when you're looking at how you came to Australia, and you go to the different tracks around Australia. How, like, you see, you've had lap records absolutely everywhere. I'd almost go as far to say almost every track in Australia you've got a lap record.
I think in one thing or another, I've come close.
Something there. It's like, oh yeah, there's Winslow. Yeah, there's Winslow. Yeah, okay. So you do drive cars very fast for what they are, and when you compare yourself to like a Formula One driver, for instance, what sort of how much different is someone that I class as a professional driver, which you are? How far away are you from a Formula One driver, for instance? Oh, it's a bit of a baited question, but...
No, it's a good question. Yes, one I ask myself a lot. I would say it's close. It depends on what genre you're in. Like a F1 driver's done, say, F3, GP2, F1. So he's trained in one genre of racing. If you stuck an F1 driver into a V8 supercar, like Jacques Villeneuve and a few of them have done, they would struggle. Because they have to then learn a whole new genre of driving.
Yeah.
I've raced against a lot of F1 drivers in my life in karting. I raced against Vettel at Macau, and a lot of world-class drivers. Grew up racing with Lewis Hamilton in karts. And at that point, you're all the same. Maybe they've got, they're extremely talented drivers, but you need the funding. They had manufacturer support or Red Bull behind them from a young age, and then they're kind of manufactured into this one genre of driver, and then they excel. And Lewis Hamilton's obviously become one of the second most successful driver in history, and possibly might even surpass Michael Schumacher. So, to answer your question, if I was to jump, or a professional the same as myself with the same experience was to jump in an F1 car now, it would probably take... I mean, they've been driving these cars for over 10 years now, so they're particularly good. But in my opinion, not too far away. And if you had 6 months of testing and experience, I'm sure you'd be talking tenths as opposed to seconds away from them.
And that's the thing. That's the crazy thing about motorsport. That's how close it is. It's funny how you can get a bunch of guys and girls in cars, and you go for qualifying, and all of a sudden you're all within seconds of each other, depending on how big the field is. And
100%.
That's the thing that I was actually amazed by, because I always thought, oh yeah, I can drive, I'm all right. Like I wanted to do I did do karts when I was just out of school, and basically had no money to race, but then I was more interested in partying and going out. So I sort of, driving is actually a good clean sport, because you have to be on the straight and narrow. You have to make sure you're getting early nights, because the driving takes a lot out of you.
100% takes a lot of focus, and you have to train. You have to be light. You can't be heavy in the car, because that's more ballast. You have to go to bed early. You have to make sure you're fit, because the races are long and you're putting lots of G-force. And a lot of people think driving a race car is easy, just like driving their car down the highway. But when you pull in 4G and the sort of forces, you almost have to be Olympic fit to drive these cars to a high standard.
And the last race I had, because you're pretty much an enduro driver, and the last race I had is the first time I've had a race for an hour, and I loved it. To me, it seems like it's almost like you're meditating. It's the same braking. You actually switch off from everything that's going on, and
it becomes unconscious driving.
Yeah,
the first few laps of a race, you're hyped up and you're in tune with what's going on, and then gradually it becomes unconscious, and you're doing things in reaction. You don't even realise you're doing them.
Yeah. So how do you prepare for something like that? So how do you prepare for Age Le Mans Series race week? What's that sort of look like?
Well, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to be driving these cars since 2013 now, and done Le Mans 4 times. So a lot of the skills that I have now have been learnt over years and years and years. But for example, over the Christmas period, I've just been back to the UK. You have to train every single day, even on Christmas Day, try and burn off the turkey so you don't get heavy, which is easy to do in a freezing cold England when it's dark outside
it's
and not
like,
much.
It's like
exercise
winter,
available.
everyone stops.
Yeah. So yeah, training, making sure you're focused on the track that's coming up next. So you watch the onboard, you're looking at the data. You can't really afford to let the rust grow, and it grows quick. So if you have 3 weeks out of the seat, the rust is the easiest way to think of it, is that the rust gradually grows, and the longer you're out of the seat, the rust increases. So the more you drive, nice and polished, the skills
so true. It's like anything in life.
Yeah. So we have simulators. I have a simulator at home, or I did, well, not before I moved. But training on the sims is very important. Watching the onboard videos. I believe you've got a simulator yourself, and you do training, so you know how important that is.
So before going to a track, racking up about 100 laps or so. So when you actually get to the track, it's almost identical. Well, it is identical in the visual aspect of it.
Yeah. And I think even if you know the track, you're still just like polishing up on your skills. But if you go to a brand new track, which you've never been to before, these days the sim is replicating the whole track. You can download the circuit. And for example, here at the Bend on a 7.7 K circuit, drivers from Europe were spending hours and hours on the sim. So they arrive on their first lap and they know the braking points, the gears. They know if it's a left or a right. This track's got brows and undulations, so it's hard to see what's coming up next. So it's critical to have a sim and train on the sim, especially with the young kids now. They're all visual personalities because they're also used to playing computer games and stuff. So to focus on that and drive the sim and tune into the track that you're about to race at is really important.
So that's the visual side of things. Is there, do you follow a diet, or do you actually have a training schedule, or are you, do you put it together yourself, or do you have a coach, or?
In the past, when I've been driving for teams, I've had a dedicated coach, trainer. I had a nasty accident about 2 years ago, so I've probably trained more in the last year and a half than I ever did before to build up I broke my back and I had to build up the muscles again. I was laying down for about 4.5 months in a brace when I broke my back, and I was amazed how quickly your muscle wastes away when you're just lying there and you can't move, and a brace keeps you stationary. I lost all my neck muscles that had built up from the age of 9 from driving these sort of vehicles.
But doesn't that gain muscle?
When I'm laying down,
when you're not doing anything.
Yeah, when I'm not moving at all on the sofa for 4.5 months, waiting for the bones to heal.
So while you're talking about that, that was your crash in 2017.
That's right, end of the year.
And hopefully, if you can send me that on board. No, we've seen it actually. We'll play it actually, so you can see it. That is a fucking horrific accident, and
it was a big one. Yeah.
So do you want to talk us through? We've got you at about 240. You were travelling.
That's correct. Yeah, I was at Abu Dhabi Golf 12 Hour. We'd won it the year before, and we were trying to win it again. We were in the number 1 car, and basically had a complete brake failure. So I think I was 5 hours into the 12 hour. Was in my second stint. I'd been driving for about 3 hours. Was coming towards the end of the stint and came into turn 11 on the back straight, 240 k's, and the brake pedal just went straight to the floor. It's like that number 1 nightmare for every racing driver. That it's the one thing you don't want is no brakes from high speed. And it was a tight hairpin corner. So from 6th gear in a first gear, 240 k's, brakes went to the floor. Nothing really you can do now in these, it's just a paddle shift, there's no handbrake, there's no ejector seat.
That would have been the only thing that could have saved you.
Yeah, there's no parachute.
Because that's at 240 k's an hour. The average person hasn't been over 200 k's an hour, and you're on a racetrack, albeit well and good. It said that it registered 41 Gs.
I think it was more than that. I think it was up to 98 Gs. because 98G was where the sensor stopped working. It was huge. It was huge.
I've been lucky enough being a jet, like a stunt plane, pulling 9Gs on a Red Bull stunt plane, and that was amazing because that person was in control. I can't imagine the thought. So what do you actually do? You obviously tried to turn, or what was going through you? Obviously, you would have had brake failure before being a driver.
Yeah, I have had brake. I've had a crash before with a brake failure at Sepang in V6. Very similar, actually. I lost rear brakes, the same as this. I was on an F1 track again, so both times probably saved my life because F1 tracks have higher safety standards compared to a Grade 2 track.
Yep.
So yeah, Abu Dhabi, I thought it was a concrete wall that I was about to hit, full speed. I tried to turn the wheel, but there was a barrier on the inside, pressed the brakes a few times, checked that my foot was pressing the right ones, shifted to try and get some engine braking, and that's about all I could do. I think I scrubbed off about 20 or 30 Ks. It was, I think, 3.5 seconds from the moment the brake went to the floor before contact with the wall. I was quite lucky that it was the Protec barrier, the F1 barrier, not a concrete wall. They have like a couple of layers of this slightly softer barrier. It's still hard, but it just absorbs some of the impact. So yeah, I was very fortunate. It hit the Protec barrier. That barrier for sure saved my life. And now we wear a hands device which stops your head going too far forward in a big impact. So that saved me breaking my neck. And now all the forces get thrown somewhere else, so it just compressed, and I got an impact fracture as your spine compresses as I hit the wall there. Yeah.
So broken spine, broken sternum, broken wrist, damaged spleen, internal bruising.
Yep.
It says you obviously had concussion. In the video, you literally hit the wall and moved like straight. Obviously, there must be adrenaline. Something. You literally moved 100%. Straight away and got out of the seat. Yeah,
I can remember the whole thing. The exit of the car is on the right-hand side because you sat on the right in these prototype Le Mans cars. That door was blocked because I was underneath the Protec barrier, so I got out to the left over the passenger side. And then I passed out after. So I had a concussion. I think the adrenaline passing through your system. I'm always scared of fire in these cars if you're upside down or in the wall hard. I was involved in a fire years ago, so I got out of the car as quick as I could, which is what you're not supposed to do if you've got a back injury.
Yeah.
But yeah, I hadn't damaged the spinal cord. I just broken the bones. Jumped out the car and passed out after when I was safely out of the car that's full of fuel.
Is that fair to say that's the worst accident that you've had, that one?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's the only crash I've ever had where I thought, this is definitely game over.
Yeah,
and then everything after is a bonus.
So recovery back, because I think I was around you when you got first back into the seat. I think it was at the bend.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was in a radical, I think.
Yeah. So what was that? Was that it was a very short period of time.
Yeah, it was probably too short. I think when the painkillers trick your brain into thinking you're okay before you are. So I jumped in 2 or 3 times. Before I was probably 100%. Obviously, your adrenaline and your instinct and your passion to drive again and not lose your career is quite strong. So I think that got me back in the car and back competitive before it would have done if I didn't have so much drive to be a racer.
So what period of time was that?
I think before I was 100% was probably in the car was probably 8 months.
Yeah.
I drove after 5 months, but I was kind of still in pain, and it was after that I got my personal trainer and started to work on the muscles around the injuries that have taken the pain away.
Yeah, it's a full-on crash. We'll play it so you can watch it because it was like, whoa. So you've had a few things with your career. I mean, obviously, we're predominantly talking about racing. I like to talk about food a bit every now and then. There appears to be a lot of people going plant-based these days or vegetarian, and I jokingly say I'm plant-based or whatnot. But since we had a chat with James Newbury here, and he was amazing to the way that he talked about just eating this food and how he looks after his health, blah, blah, blah.
It's very important.
It's extremely important because I'm not one for, I train to eat, see. So that's where I'm a little bit different. And I like sauce, so there's no doubt I like some condiments on it. But he was talking to value, especially on race week. That's probably the time that you need to make sure you're feeling at your premium. Is there anything that particularly you eat if you're racing, or do you just eat whatever? Because you don't seem to eat much, just for the record.
Yeah, a few people have said that. I find, on a race weekend, what you eat's important. Obviously, having carbs an hour or two before you drive, so you're burning off what's in your stomach whilst you're actually in the car. But I find more importantly for me is, just trying to eat healthy when you're traveling, because obviously I travel from England, around Europe and Asia, Australia, so I'm always jet lagged. Timetable is always upside down, so to eat healthy when you're traveling is actually very hard. If I'm back in England and I'm home with the parents, then it's easy because my mum's like my private chef.
It makes it easy.
Vegetables and fish, but yeah, just sticking to that diet and that healthy living and eating is critical.
So when you're driving, so you can eat well. What do you have in the car? Do you have a cool pack, or do you have an ice? What they have, the ice packs?
In GT cars, we have a cool suit, to try and keep your core temperature down. In Asia, it's important. Obviously, Australia as well. They don't have them so much in Europe. So when the Europeans come over here for Asia Le Mans series, they all boil in the car, and you see the teams start trying to invent new ways of cooling their drivers with paddling pools outside their garages.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. I saw that at the Asia Le Mans series. There's a pool there.
That's right. Yeah, so they'll fill that with cold water, and when the drivers jump out after an hour or two, we'll drive around these cars with roofs and engines just a few millimeters behind them at high temperatures. The drivers are boiling, so they just jump out and jump straight out with their race suits on into a cold pool.
And what sort of temps it get in the cabin?
That's a good question. There's temperature gauges in there, and you're not supposed to be. I think it's 10 degrees over cockpit, over ambient temperature. The cockpit's not supposed to be warmer than 10 degrees over, but it gets hot. That's all I know. It's probably 50 degrees at some point. So I did a 2-hour stint at Sepang a few years ago in an LMP2 car, and I can't remember the last 20 minutes of the stint. I've just got photos of me out of the car, half passed out, with each arm in an esky, trying to cool the blood circulating around my body. Can't even remember the stint. I was just trying to aim for 5 laps in front of where I was, just to try and get through the race. But we got through it and we came second in the race, but I can't actually remember that part.
So what's the longest stint that you've had in the car then?
At Le Mans, I've done a 3-hour and 50-minute stint, which is a long time to keep focused. But Le Mans is an easier track. Like the Bend, for example, has got 35 corners, over 7.7k. Le Mans has probably got 20 corners over 14 Ks. So you drive longer, but there's less work to do. There's big long straights where you get up to like 330 kilometers an hour. So
but you have time to, you have
time to rest, and you're not putting G force when you're going straight. It's the corners that wear you out.
So each circuit is differently taxing.
Yeah, 100%. Like a small track like here in Australia, like Wakefield or Winton, is more exhausting than a long track like Le Mans.
Yeah, okay. So tracks around the world, what's been the best racetrack that you've raced on?
I mean, everyone says Spa in Belgium. That is extremely good, especially in a downforce car like an F3 car. So Spa is one of the best tracks in the world. The Bend, the long track,
that's cool.
That is extremely good in an aero car. Road America, Elkhart Lake, fantastic track there. They're probably my three favourites.
That Road America, that's not the Texas F1 track.
No, that's in Austin. No, This one is Elkhart Lake, which is Wisconsin, I think.
Okay.
Road America, fantastic track, yeah.
A good racing track for what did you race there?
What did I drive there? I drove a historic Formula Ford there years ago. And I raced Atlantics there, and I drove the Indy Lights car there. That's like that's like the American favourite track. That's like the Spa of America.
Okay.
Ups and downs and fantastic corners and high speed stuff.
So, group of cars, what's been your favourite category of cars to race?
Best car I ever drove was probably the Champ car, which was IndyCar back in 2008. The series merged again and became IndyCar, but there was IRL and Champ car. I think it was like 850 horsepower, huge turbo on it. I'd come straight from Formula 3 straight to Champ car, which is like F3 to F1. And I was doing over 200 miles an hour for the first time in my life, and I did 5 laps, and I jumped out the car and all smiles to the team, went over to my dad and said, Dad, I don't think I can do this. My brain's not fast enough to keep up with the car. But then after you've done 10 or 20 laps, your brain adapts quickly and everything starts to slow down and you can start to process the images that are going through your head at such high speed. And that's probably the most fun car I've driven ever.
So have you seen the electric series? The E?
Formula E?
Yeah.
I have, yeah.
What's your take on that? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love engines, I love the noise and everything like that, but I do love my Tesla.
Yes, I like your Tesla too.
It's amazing. But when you compare the Formula E series, I'm guessing you have to compare that to Formula 1 because that's the electric alternative. Obviously, they're nowhere near as powerful as the Formula 1.
No, it's obviously all the manufacturers and the governments around the world are trying to clean everything up and, the most economic way of racing
but they
cut down on carbon.
Attracting a lot of the XF1 sons or, basically the kids of Formula 1 drivers.
Well, all the manufacturers are behind it, aren't they? So you've got Audi, Porsche, they're pumping in heaps of cash into. In fact, they've pulled out of Le Mans racing in some areas to focus on Formula E. The cars are not particularly quick, and I think the batteries at the moment, they have 2 cars for a 1 hour race. So they do half an hour in one. They come in for a pit stop and change cars.
And change another.
And they're on treaded tyres. They're on a road tyre, so they're not massively fast, and they don't sound like what we're used to racing cars sounding like. But it's high profile, and they're definitely working hard on trying to make it successful.
And what's making them successful? They're very good with their marketing. Yeah, they're not afraid to ask their fans what they want, and they're rocking up into big city centres.
Hong Kong, London, right in the middle of the city.
Right in the middle of the city, where we had a good event here in Adelaide. I forgot what it was, the Motorsports Festival, which is in the city, and we didn't get it this year, but it was because it was in the city. It was one of the best events that we'd had here in Adelaide. Yeah,
that's where the crowds are. Yeah, that's where the people are.
Correct, because they'll come to the city rather than go out, an hour out. And bear in mind, yourself, an hour to a racetrack's not very far at all.
No, not for what we're used to. But for a fan to get out there, you have to be pretty committed to the course.
Yeah.
As opposed to if it's in your front garden at Clipsal or somewhere local. If you're in Adelaide and it's like a 10-minute walk or a 10-minute drive, then it's obviously much easier to get a huge fan base along.
So committed to the cause. You've been in a lot of tracks. Well, where do you think the most hardcore fans are from?
Japan's pretty big. Yeah, you go and race in Japan and the fans are super passionate. I've had fans that follow us all around the Asia Le Mans series and even over to England, and they come up with special presents for you and
they cook food or something? Or?
Yeah, they bring you cookies and stuff and some of their food, some of their foods that they have in Japan. I'd say the Japanese fans are probably the most committed and passionate and super nice.
And they get right into it, which I guess gives the sport more strength with what you're doing, because one of the things I've seen with motorsport, it seems that it's hard to get, and talking about the lower level maybe, not V8 supercars or so, but any other motorsport which most people are driving, it seems hard to be able to get interest of families and fans at a track, because if you weren't really into motorsport, you could technically say it's quite boring. And it's definitely a better sport to participate in as opposed to watch. Without a doubt. So how do you think, have you got any ideas on what you think is the perfect combination moving forward to, for instance, you used to have test match cricket and that's all. And then now they've turned that into, they did the one-dayers, and then the one-dayers have 2020. So they've tried to evolve. So tennis have 5 setters. They've now done some tournaments where they go to 3 sets, where it's a bit more punchy. Golf's in the same boat, where people don't seem to want to hang around a whole day anymore.
No. It needs to be short and sweet and keep people's attention for half an hour or an hour, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Attention spans.
So have you probably, it hasn't crossed your mind, but have you thought of how you think motorsport could be better for the family that comes? Because for me, it's the most selfish thing I do. I'm
I think
away
it's good to keep the kids entertained, isn't it? I've seen in
100%.
America, the IndyCar races, they have bouncy castles and kids parks, and the dad can go and watch the race, and the kids have got somewhere to go and play, and they enjoy going to the track. Kids see cars for 10 or 20 minutes, and then they're kind of bored of it.
Done.
And then they have lots of entertainment at the IndyCar races in the States, and that works really well. They get huge crowds there. And it's a family event, not just a guy's event, so the whole family can go.
So maybe that's something that Australia needs to do, is like, we need to be a bit more accommodating to families, because I've got 2 young girls, on like 5 and 6, but they love coming to the cars and playing, but there's just that small period of window, because motorsport's a lot of downtime.
It is 100%. Yeah, no, I think focusing on entertaining the whole family as opposed to just one member of the family would make it a lot easier to get along.
And do you think that's possible?
I think so. I think there's a few things. I think the A1 GP did a very good job of having the cars in their country's colours, and it was country competing against country, so everybody had a team to choose for. I think having someone you can go for is important. Entertaining the family, making it a family sport as opposed to just a male interested sport.
Yeah, I think it needs to have a major... there needs to be a change to get it more family orientated.
Yeah.
And having some things like the castles, or having entertainment, because it's particularly the kids. Yeah, and because motorsport, there's a lot of downtime. Like, that's the hardest part about motorsport is you're on in the car for whatever it is, 30 minutes or hours or whatever, and then you seem to have 3-4 hours doing nothing, and then it's 30 minutes on. Yeah. I think you mentally have to be extremely strong to be ready. That that whole period of time when you're in Parc Fermé, you're waiting to go out, then you get there, and then you wait for it's a very mental game, and I think you need to be very strong.
And that's something you learn over the years and years of doing it, where you can switch it on when you need it, and then even more importantly is to switch it off, so you save your mental energy for when you need to perform again. Switching it on and off, is important. So
for me, I love running amok at the track, having fun, engaging. But as soon as I close my visor, that to me is like, okay, that's shake and bake, baby, shake and bake. And that's how I do it, because I can clown around all I want, but as soon as I put the visor down, for me it's a switch to switch on.
I think I'm the same. Yeah. I think I go into self-preservation and wanting to win kind of mode, but when the helmet's off, you can be friendly and charismatic and joke around with your racing competitors. But the moment the helmet's on, it's like, that guy's not coming past.
Well, you're one of the first people that told me that you've been racing blah blah blah. It's a weird sport to actually be told that, you know what, you have the right to win here, and that's because when you first start, you start at the back of the pack, then you get to mid-pack if you're lucky, and there's always a couple of guys that you think are in your mind are quicker, and you're the first one that basically said, you've got what it takes to win. You need to understand that, so to take a win. Yeah,
agreed. I think if you're fast in practice, or you've had a few occasions when you're in the top 2 or top 3, or yourself when you had your pole position at Eastern Creek a couple of years ago, or last year, whenever it was. And then if you're on pole, you're the fastest guy there. You deserve to win now. If you've got racecraft and you can keep your focus for the half an hour or the 1 hour race, whatever it is, then you should definitely be winning the race if you're on pole. If anything, it's easier if you're in second or third, because the pressure's off then. But if you're in pole position, you've set the fastest lap, you've beat all your competitors at the most important part of the weekend before the race, then your mindset's got to be looking in the distance and trying to pull away from these guys that you've just beaten in qualifying.
So how important to you is quali? Because you've got qualifying, which sets you up for wherever you're going to start. How important is it for you?
I think in sprint racing, like what you participate in the Australian Prototype Series, it's important. You need to qualify somewhere near the front, and the first lap or so, when people are on cold tyres and trying to warm their brains up to get back into the mode, that's critical then, because you can make some spots up or lose spots very quickly. So in sprint racing, that might only last half an hour. If you've lost a spot, it's very hard to get it back again, because everybody's going to be fighting hard and not wanting to give you an easy crack at it. Endurance racing, a 24-hour, qualifying becomes a lot less important then. And the drivers that get selected are drivers that are good over the long distance, that don't make mistakes. you don't necessarily are chasing those 1 or 2 tenths like you are in a sprint race. Sprint racing, qualifying is critical. Endurance racing, when you've got 3 drivers and it's the average, it's less important.
So if you could have some advice for an up-and-coming driver, and what advice could you say that you've had over your last 36 years that you can turn around and go, you know what, I wish I knew this when I was 15?
I think because I do coach a few young guys, and there's a guy, Daniel Frost or Harry Jones, that I've helped from a young age, and they're both becoming professional drivers as we speak. I think the number one most important thing, like to be successful at anything in business or racing or any sport, you just can't give up. When times are tough, you just got to keep positive and just keep charging ahead. Give it 110%. You're always going to have bad days, and in fact, you probably learn more on the tough days and the tough times than you do when things are going well. If you get it too easy, I think you don't learn that strength in your character to be able to pull through when things do get tough.
So I don't know Daniel, but I know Junior, Harry.
Yep.
Harry Jones. And, I think he's 19.
Yep.
And his demeanour, the way he presents himself, he's a freak when you look at it.
He's extremely mature for his age, which I think anyone who's going to perform well in sport is. If you see all the guys who have, from young ages, that have done well, Tiger Woods or the exceptions to the sport, are always super mature for their years, and Harry is very, very mature. He's got a very good temperament, and I coached him for 2 years there in Formula MRF and Formula 3. Now he's just about to become a professional driver, in my opinion. He's been racing Porsches. He's won Australian Formula 3, GT3 Cup Challenge here in Australia. So, he's going places. He's definitely got what it takes.
And for me, I look at someone like that and I see the way he goes through his data, the way he knows what he wants for setup in a car. And I think that's the sort of kid that should be driving F1.
Yeah, he's methodical, he's smart, he's doing his degree at university.
Engineer, but the reality is, even as good as he is, the chances of getting an F1 drive are extremely, extremely thin.
Yeah. I saw an article in the paper in England which said Lewis Hamilton probably had £20 million spent on him before he ever sat in an F1 car. So £20 million, which is what, 38 million Aussie. And it's becoming harder and harder each year. So for Harry, for example, he's investing money now in his future career, and he sort of like steps aside from the F1 dream early.
Yeah, no, that's what he has. Because I would say if I had $50 million, I'd be giving it to him to put in F1. I don't know how I'd get that back. But it seems that the number that they talk about for F1 is that you need about 50 mil to bring a sponsor on board with 50 mil.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way it kind of works. Yeah, you need either help from the family or from a big sponsor.
Like your dad to own the team, that would help.
Yeah, or your dad to own Red Bull or Mercedes or Williams or some kind of You need to find the funds from somewhere. The car, someone has to pay for the tyres, the fuel, the track, the personnel. It's a very expensive sport, but it can be done. Lewis Hamilton came from a family with nothing, the same as myself. We used to race at our local go-kart track. My dad used to help him get his go-kart off of the roof rack off of their cheap car that they had back in those days. His dad was smart and sold Lewis as a future world champion to Mercedes and McLaren. Yeah, and within a few years' time, he was at the track with a 40-foot lorry there and mechanics from McLaren setting up his go-kart. So he was going places. So it can still be done, for sure.
Do you think it can be done now like that?
Yeah.
Like with the, you look at the kids of today. I look at the F1 guys because, let's face it, F1 got really fucking boring for a while there. And, you can blame Schumacher because it was just so boring it was winning. But then you look at the last, couple of years ago, and then Netflix come out, the doco Drive to Survive, where my wife hates motorsport, but she freaking loved that series. And she went, oh, that's why you do this. And I'm like, yeah, that gives you a little bit of a taste of how it really is. And you look at the racing of the last 7 rounds of F1 last year, 2019, was probably...
Yeah, it was good.
best racing I can remember seeing.
Yeah.
You know, I rate it on am I asleep or awake by the end of the race, right? Because in Australia, we're always getting up at stupid times to watch it. True. And I'm a bit of a tragic. I like watching almost every race.
Yeah.
There's a couple that are too far skewed. And you watch the driving and the drivers coming through, and they appear to be having the time of their fucking life. Like... The young
Nando, and, all those guys.
And Leclerc, like these guys are having a ball, and you know Ricciardo definitely he is having a ball. You know, people said, "Oh, why'd you go to Renault?" I mean, it's pretty simple. He got paid a fucking lot of money. like literally, for me, it was a pretty easy step because he was never going to be number one driver at F1 because they're the golden child, Verstappen, and he can drive. And even Verstappen, I think, was a 17 mil contract as the number one driver, and Ricciardo's out there for I think 50 mil for 2 years. I mean, it's a pretty easy decision.
I think so. Yeah, as a racing driver, you've only got a certain shelf life, right? So he'd had a few good years with Red Bull, won races, pole positions, knew he wasn't going to be the number one choice in the team, to go to Renault, which has been world champion in the past, and has got, you know, it's with a big manufacturer, which has got potential for the future. Yeah. It's a no-brainer, and okay, they weren't race winners in the first year, but there's a long-term plan there, I think, and eventually it'll do a full circle, and they'll be the new Mercedes in a few years' time, I think.
So, have you got to meet Daniel?
No, I raced in the same series as him years ago, but never. He's probably one of the F1 drivers that our paths have never crossed. I've crossed paths with a few.
I love him. I've got a good Daniel Ricciardo story. You want to hear it?
Yeah.
So we're at Melbourne F1.
Okay.
We were there with Philip Morris and I think they're Ferrari, so we're there with Philip Morris and they had a pit tour and we went down and they said, all right, come pit tour. We got down there and I was like, oh, we got our times wrong. I said, all right. So I had a Ferrari hat on in the Ferrari box, like blah, blah, blah. And we were driving back and I was vlogging stuff, like I was sitting on the back of the golf cart and someone goes, oh, that's Ricciardo. And I was like, what? So an Aston had pulled into the car park, inside of the track car park. I said, stop. So I jumped out. I ran down to the car and I looked, I go, Ricciardo, I love you. And he goes, gay hat. And I was like, oh, fuck. I ripped it off and threw it away and I said, sorry, mate, good luck. And he goes, that's better. And he went, I want his fucking champion.
He's
like, first, gay hat. And I was like, oh, shit. I couldn't believe it. It was so fucking funny. I felt so embarrassed because I didn't even think I was so starstruck. That he was rocking up just at the track. In an Aston, so that's Red Bull. He must have been Red Bull. So.
The good thing about Ricciardo is he's kept who he is, isn't he? Formula One hasn't changed him. And he's still fun, and he's still himself, and he's not lost himself like some drivers do up their own behinds.
And you can sit there and watch the way he drives in what he has. I think he's an amazing driver, and I'm a little bit biased because he's an Aussie, but. I love watching him drive. You know that he'll give it a go.
Yep.
It's just I think that the difference of the cars is a bit too...
Yeah, I mean, his teammate Hulkenberg's exceptionally good, has won Le Mans and would have won races if he was in a good car in his career, and he's outshone Hulkenberg, which was not going to be easy. So Ricciardo is exceptionally talented, and he's still fun, and he still enjoys it, and you can tell he's enjoying life, which is important, eh?
Well... we'll come back to that because I want to talk about F1. But yeah, enjoying yourself totally makes a difference on how your life's going.
Yeah.
We recently spoke with Jason Roberts, and he talked about having food and occasions and family time and people that you're friends with is just as important to a healthy life than not doing it.
For sure.
And when you watch the F1 group guys, and I mean our series for the Australian Prototype series, everyone gets along. Like, we go out to dinner with each other.
I've seen that.
And we have fun. Like, you know, we don't all agree with each other's driving styles or, you know, if there's any lunatic missiles in the group or anything like that. But we sit there and we respect that. And, you know, whether you're Mark Lauke's 70 years old or, you know, whoever's young or Jason Macris or whoever, you sit there and you have a great time because you are away from your family, so whoever you're socialising with, it needs to be important.
100%, yeah. Whether you're a professional or an am, doing racing because you just love driving cars, you have to enjoy it. And the people you're racing with, and the team you're with, and the guys you're with every weekend. Say for me, when I'm travelling around, and it's crucial. Yeah, you can end up coming away from a good weekend unhappy, or you can sometimes come away from a bad weekend very happy because of the people you were with and having like the time of your life, which is the way it should be. We're privileged to be able to drive these things and do this as a hobby or a lifestyle. So I think it's important to really enjoy it and enjoy the people around you.
So you do see it with some racing divisions, categories. It's a bit serious.
Most.
Okay, most. And in fact, and that's what you've said to me in the past, is, mate, you guys, this is, your category is not quite like how most people are.
No, it is different. Yeah, you're all friends, and I've been out for dinner with you guys a few times at events and stuff, and it's great. There's a good camaraderie between the drivers, and everyone talks to each other in the pit lane. When it gets too serious, people
stop
don't
talking.
talk. You don't want people near your race car in case you see what springs or setup you've got. It all gets a bit too serious. So there's definitely like a happy medium, and you just has to be personable, and people have to be able to interact with each other. And
especially when I'm not a professional, I do it because I love it. I love going fast, and the best place to do it's on a racetrack.
Yeah, the safest place, and the only place you can do it right is on the racetrack. So.
But the only place you can do it comfortably without getting caught by a cop. That's pretty much the main reason.
Yeah.
And go around corners as fast as you can.
It's a buzz, isn't it? It's a big adrenaline buzz.
It is.
You can't beat it, I don't think.
You cannot beat it.
No.
And the thing that it knocked out of me is I used to be a bit silly in a car. No doubt about that. And to be able to race, I just totally get that bug out of my system. So I think it makes...
It's the safe way of doing it, isn't it?
Yeah. And
fireproof suit, helmet, tracks, runoff, gravel traps, marshals.
The irony of it is it's so expensive to do the safest thing that you should be doing.
True.
And I guess racing's not for everyone. Like, I've seen people come into the series that you have to be mentally... You actually have to have some mental stamina to race. And it's not something people anticipate that when they come into race. And
you need smarts, you need to be able to focus, concentrate for long periods of time. You need to really want to do it as well, because you have to get up early, you have to tow the race car to the track, or for sure. You have to dedicate a lot of time to it. So
when you see the F1 kids, guys, they all still have dinners together on the Wednesday night.
Yep.
Unless the photos you see, they're all at dinner together.
I think that's just a PR stunt. They just take that one picture. Maybe it's more like that.
My dream.
Maybe it's more like that now, but for sure, F1's pretty killer and pretty hardcore. I think as you say, like the Carlos Sainz and they're making it more fun, and Formula One, since Bernie Ecclestone's not in control anymore, I think they're trying to make it more fun and fan friendly, and trying to change the image of F1 from being super straight and super boring.
So you look at the F1 guys, Charles Leclerc, Nat watched that Drive to Survive. We were with Philip Morris, and we get to have a little lunch with Charles Leclerc. So Nat's doesn't fall hugging him. I said, and we were right near where the toilets were.
Okay.
So I said to Nat, one thing I can guarantee you, every driver is going to go to these toilets before they have to go out to. And then as Max Verstappen came through, and Nat ran and grabbed him. I'll send you the photo so you can post that, and full hugs him, and he's like, oh, and he just started laughing because she was like bear hugged him. I go, it's okay, she's my life. That was so funny, but the guys they're all pretty cool. I got my claim to fame is photo of Lewis Hamilton, and Nat goes, "Oh, that's a Pussycat Dolls guy." That's Lewis Hamilton, get my camera.
Yeah.
And his manager was shooing him off, and he said, "Lewis, got to go." And he goes, "No, we'll wait." And then Nat turned the camera off, and a 1 second photo turned into 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But
Lewis is cool. I've raced with him, and I spent a week with him in Melbourne back in 2013 when he came in for the Grand Prix. And when you just see things on TV and it's all pretty straight laced, and when people are wound up in the car, they say things that. But when you spend the time with him, I raced with him years ago, and I saw him again for this week, and he was exactly the same as he was when he was a kid. Yeah. He's just super nice.
Did you recognise him?
Yeah. No, I was with him for the whole week because he lost his license. He
did the burnout in the Merc. What a legend!
So I drove him around for the week. I hung
So-
out with him. Yeah, no, it was cool. And he was super nice to everyone we met in all the restaurants, the concierge at the hotel. He was like just 100% normal, the same as he was when he was 8 years old racing his cadet car at Cambridge Kart Club and Hoddesdon in England. Yeah.
So for people that don't know, that is what got him back in my good books, was when he got busted doing a burnout on Lygon Street in one of the Mercs.
He
Obviously,
just won the F1 race and he's doing a burnout, and unfortunately the police didn't see it that way and impounded his car.
that is fucking legendary, and that is pretty cool.
I think you should be allowed to do that, shouldn't you? If you've just won the Melbourne Grand Prix, you should be able to do a bit of a burnout in your company car.
100% agree. In regards to Formula One drivers, who is... I don't know if you have got an old favourite and a current favourite, but I'd like to know who you, in your eyes, who are the best two, like an old school... And
Senna was always my favourite.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of... I think Lewis was the same. I think, and Senna, we grew up with him winning races and being the legend that he still is. Yep, Senna, and then probably Lewis is my favourite driver. Obviously, I raced with him and did bits and pieces with him, but when I spent that time with him, I realised he was still a really nice guy and normal, and he's been so successful and dedicated to the cause. So yeah, so previous would be Senna, and current day would be Lewis.
Yeah, there's no doubt Senna, and the Senna doco really explains what sort of a guy he was.
Yeah, he was totally driven, and yeah, it was win or bust all the time. So
win it or win it.
You've got to respect that a little bit, I think.
Yeah, that's in regards to the drivers now. You see the couple of the young kids coming through, but Kimi Räikkönen, he is the funniest radio guy on the planet. Do you think he tries to be, or do you think he is naturally?
No, he is. Yeah, he is 100% like that. He's obviously got his brand now, isn't he? He's very unique within Formula One, and he's got a lot of fans. But he was racing Formula Ford back when I was racing him with James Courtney and a few of the other guys. So I was there for his first Formula Renault races and Formula Ford Festival at Brands Hatch, and a few nights out with him when at the Silverstone end of season Toka party and stuff. And yeah, seeing him drinking his vodka and some of the things you still see him doing nowadays on his yacht at Monaco.
Yeah, and even now he says, he's not afraid to talk about, we've been partying, in off-season. It's not they train hard, these guys. These are Formula One drivers. There's no doubt they're fit.
They're super fit. Kimi seems to be able to get away with stuff because he's so good. He's not really... Well, when he first broke into F1, he wasn't particularly good at talking on camera and PR, and didn't really care about looking at data and working with his engineers, but he's just got so much natural talent that he got away with it all.
Yeah, and that day, the day of the kids coming through now, you talked about simulators before. You mentioned you've been on probably the best simulator that you can go on in the UK.
Le Mans, before you do the Le Mans 24 hours, you have to go and spend 8 hours on the Le Mans simulator. I think it's like a €2 million sim, some really good software, and it's like you're actually there. It submerges you straight into, you feel like you're at Le Mans. You have to pass, you have to drive at night, you have to drive in the day, you have to follow some of their strict rules that they have at Le Mans, slow zones and those types of things. The 3 different safety car scenarios that could happen. So yeah, the Le Mans sim is the best I've ever been on. Yeah.
So that is, if you want to race in that, so that the pinnacle of, you've got the pinnacle of Formula One racing, obviously. That's Formula One.
Sprint racing.
Yep. So the pinnacle in enduro racing is the 24-hour Le Mans.
Correct. Yep.
And it's, if anyone wants to do an enduro race, you see a lot of F1 drivers that finish F1. They want to then come and... who was the last person?
Alonso won it last year.
Yeah. He came and won it last year. So then they they want to compete in the 24-hour Le Mans. What is the driver structure for... Do they have 3 drivers? You've heard of having 3 pros, and then that's the Pro-Am Le Mans. And then most teams get 2... what do you like a business driver? Gentleman drivers or C? What they got, a bronze license?
Yeah.
Could you just explain?
There's 4 different gradings. There's bronze, silver, gold, and platinum for the driver gradings. Platinum is F1 or ex-F1 drivers.
What are you?
Gold and silver. I'm gold. If you've won an F3 championship, you're automatic gold. or if you've been in the top 3 in a championship, so you're gold. Silver would be like the first level of a pro driver, and then you've got the bronze driver, which would be an AM, someone who doesn't do it as his full-time job, but is still, some of them are extremely good. Like some of the bronze drivers are as good as silvers and the slower golds.
But
it's just a way.
Staying bronze though.
Yeah, because in this style of racing, you have to have a silver, or in the LMP3, you have to have a bronze. So it gives pros a good job for the future after they've retired from F1 or from V8 supercars. And it means that the bronze drivers can compete at the biggest events in the world, like Le Mans 24 Hours, and race LMP2 and LMP3, and it becomes a really good mix then.
So if you don't qualify for that, like how many cars are in Le Mans? I think last time it was like 60 cars.
Yeah, it used to be 56. They extended it to 60. So it's been going since 1910 or something like that. It's been going a long time. I think it was 87 years. Is it?
Really?
Something like that.
Let's have a look.
Yep. So yeah, 60 entries. Probably 10 of them will be LMP1.
1923.
1923, right.
The first 24-hour Le Mans race in France.
Yeah, right.
And interestingly enough, they got the hybrid car that I think is now banned from everything, yeah? The 919.
Yeah.
Is that the Porsche that they don't let at any tracks anymore because it doesn't fit any rules and regulations?
Okay, it's too quick.
Yeah. No, so they got rid of all of the...
they change them quite a lot, though. The cars that participate have changed the rule. The ACO changed the rules here and there between GT cars and LMP cars over the years.
So on the track you have the LMP... Is it LMP1 or is it just LMP2?
LMP1.
LMP1?
LMP2.
Yeah.
And then GTE, which is like a souped-up GT3.
Which is, what was that, the Age Le Mans? Were they GT...?
So that's Le Mans 24 Hour, and then you've got like the European, the Asian, and the American series, and they have LMP3, LMP2, and GT3s.
So that's to qualify to get to that 60 on the grid to the most prestigious race, which is the 24-hour Le Mans in France.
Correct, yeah. And that's like mid-June. That's the longest day of the year, which makes sense for the longest race in the world. So that mid-June is the longest day of the year in Europe.
Okay, so to get part of that, let's say you don't qualify. Like, let's say JP's got JP Racing, right?
Yep.
And I've picked a couple. I've got you as a driver. If you haven't got a drive, that I'm going to drive, and I'll just grab Macros. Right?
Yep.
How much would it cost us to do that event?
So I think the teams, if you're going to do it in LMP2, for example, you drive like prototype cars. So an LMP2 would be the obvious choice. So I think the teams probably spend, once the teams have bought the cars and the engine leases and all that type of stuff, I think just the cost to run the event is about €700,000. It's a 24-hour race, so the car needs a full rebuild after. It's done like a season in one weekend. It's a 2-week event as well. There's a test day. The team's there for 2 weeks. You have practice, qualifying, night practice. So
this is sounding expensive.
It's getting more and more expensive every day.
It's sounding
so I think just cost is €700,000. So you're probably looking at €1 million once you've taken everything into consideration. Yeah.
For one race.
Yeah, for the biggest race in the world, and there's like 300,000 people crowd.
That's not bad.
Yeah, that's huge. There's like huge viewing figures around the world. So,
but no one. I'm assuming no one. You can't do it. You said you can't bring a team in it.
No, you have to win a series, so you can't be a brand new team. You have to have competed in one of their championships.
Okay.
If you're doing WEC, the WEC, which is the World Endurance Championship, then Le Mans is one of their rounds. So you automatically would get an entry to Le Mans, and that's LMP1, LMP2, GT, the same. And if you're in European Le Mans, Asian Le Mans, then you have to win to get your ticket in.
So you can't win a race; you got to win the series.
Win the series, yeah. For your automatic entry, you have to win the series.
So that's full on. That's hence why it's one of the best there.
Yeah, it's worked out quite well for me because I think all four of my Le Mans drives have been with the Asia Le Mans Series champions, because I participate, and whether we've won the championship in Asia Le Mans or been second or third, the team that's won the ticket has then chosen me as one of their drivers. So
what's been your best result?
So I've won this is the positive first. I've won quite a lot of championships and races, but Le Mans 24 Hours is the one race that's haunted me. So I've had the fastest lap of the race in 2014. I started the race, was in 6th place, fastest lap of the race, and then there was a shower, and my teammate crashed on his outlap on slick tyres on a wet track. And then in the last 3 times of doing it, we've had gearbox and alternator problems and just haunted. So yeah, I thought it was going to be 3rd time lucky, and then I thought, okay, well, if it's not 3rd time lucky, 4th time, the odds are getting better and better. But it wasn't quite to be. So I'll keep trying until we're standing on that podium. That's been my life, and my whole career goal has been to win that one race. Or obviously wanting to get to F1, that hasn't happened. I've been lucky enough to have done everything else, won a lot of stuff, experienced some great things, but the one thing left in my career now is to win that Le Mans 24 Hours, and I'm still pushing and got the drive the same as I did when I was 18 years old.
So still hunting for that big one.
Yeah.
With regards to something that happened for you in 2008. So we go back. So this is going back a few years.
Yep. Is this another crash?
This wasn't your crash.
Yes. Thank you.
Or did you actually cause the crash?
I didn't cause the crash.
Okay. Yeah. So what happened? So this is this is where we've seen it on BBC's doco. So you've got an award for this. So it must have been a great crash to get an award. I've never got an award at a crash.
It was a big one. It was a big one from Moreno Soprapto. Yeah, so it was F3 Asian Formula 3 Series 2007. I qualified on pole position, made a bad start, lost one position. The guy coming through from 3rd place to try and take my position as he was jinking out at the last moment to try and overtake me, just caught my rear wheel with his front wheel at probably 160 miles an hour. So quite fast. What's that in kilometres?
Oh, I know. That's
220,
like
230.
230,
yeah. And basically did the same as what Mark Webber did at the Singapore Grand Prix on Kovalainen years ago, where he clipped the back and did a somersault over the top of him. So Moreno clipped the back of my car, somersaulted. As I was driving through the corner, I could look up to the right and I could see his helmet, and his car was completely upside down.
No halos back then?
No halos back then, no.
Yep.
No, correct. He landed, somersaulted, it was a huge crash, massive. And then he got wedged in the car, stuck between the barrier and the gravel trap on the floor, upside down. The engine was half hanging off, fuel was pouring out, water was pouring out. The car was in a mess, in half. I stopped and helped him get out of the car and just did what anybody else would have done in that situation, I think. And the car burst into flames just as we were in there. I undid his belts and he fell out onto the floor, and he was sort of half conscious, half not. The car burst into flames and the whole car burnt to zero. The whole carbon fibre was completely evaporated in the end, and the tyre barrier caught on fire. The thing was on fire for 4 hours. It was ironic because Moreno's father runs the track. It was owned by the Suhartos in Indonesia. Jakarta was the circuit. I've got Moreno Soprapto very close behind me in my slipstream. The sort of speeds we hit there would probably be 165 miles an hour. And then the braking point is just after you reach top speed.
Still on the first lap, the drivers power down the straight, jostling for position. But then disaster strikes.
And the moment I touch the brakes, I can feel that slight dink in the rear of my car. When he's actually hit the rear of my car and the front of the wing has gone up, it's acted more like a plane, so he's actually taken off. The next thing I know, I look up in the air and I can see Moreno is actually upside down and overtaking me over the top of my head. Upside down. It's ripped off the rear wing off of my car as well, so my car's spun out of control as well and ended up in the gravel quite near where he's come to rest.
James realised his friend was in trouble. Moreno's car had smashed into the barrier, trapping him inside. He runs to help his friend.
I could tell this was a huge accident, so the first thing that was in my mind was that Moreno was okay. The car had somersaulted, rolled over, and he could have broken a leg, he could have been unconscious. I just wanted to get in there and do anything I could. I could see that Moreno wasn't actually going to be able to get out of the car on his own. I jumped up onto the tyre barrier and tried to lever myself with my legs up on the barrier and tried to push the car over onto its wheels, and whilst doing that I managed to push the car like a few inches away from the barrier, which was just enough room for me to slot myself down between the car and the barrier, which gave me then access to Moreno, so I could kind of help him with his seat belts. There wasn't enough room to get my crash helmet below the car and the barrier, so I was kind of just feeling around in the car and doing whatever I could, really.
With no thought for his own safety, James struggles to help his friend and rival Marino escape.
At this point there was fuel pumping all over, like absolute worst case scenario, fuel pumping all over a boiling hot engine. I knew it was going to burst into flames any moment. I managed to turn the fuel pump off. I thought we'd buy some more time. But the vapour had ignited then, and then we were actually on fire. It's now like a mad rush to get out as quick as we can. I've hopped out the top and he's crawled underneath the car. I'm not even sure how we managed to get him through that hole. It was very small, but he got out. From the moment we actually ran away from the car, the seat was already on fire. I think Moreno just had some light burns around his neck, but the moment we were out, it was on fire at that moment. It was as close as you get. 1 more second, you'd have had more burns. 10 more seconds, it would have been pretty horrific, yeah. The whole Formula 3 car just burnt to nothing. Within, I think, 20 minutes, you couldn't even see anything. From the wheels to the tyres to the carbon fibre cockpit, everything had completely gone. It was amazing.
I think when he shout, make me like wake up, like make me wake, and then he said, "You have to go, get out from the car," and then he tried to pull me out.
Yeah, so Moreno was out, safe, just some light burns on his neck. I had a singed suit. He was fine. We restarted the race. I got to take my pole position back, which was fortunate, because if they'd have run it within half an hour of the red flag, I would have been a DNF and not been allowed to start.
So they redid the race?
Yeah, we restarted the race. Moreno obviously wasn't in it because his car had disintegrated by this point. Yeah, it was good for me. I went on to win the race. It was one of them weekends that was quite pivotal in my career, because I won the race, which led to me winning the championship at the end of the year. And from helping Moreno escape from his car, I won some awards, got a lot of coverage in the motorsport press, and it launched me into a bit of a profile within England. The BBC did a documentary, got invited along to Buckingham Palace and won an award from the Queen, the Royal Humane Award. Yeah, for something that to me didn't ever feel like I really did anything that special, just helped him make it out of a car because he was in a predicament, and then got massively rewarded for that. But yeah,
the footage of it is there's good footage of that too, which is we'll try and show that. So we obviously like talking about food, and you haven't. I noticed you don't eat much. When you go back home, what's the favourite dish that your mum cooks?
Favourite dish is mac and cheese, macaroni cheese, but that's not my healthy dish.
Oh my god, I love mac and cheese.
Me too.
Like,
that's my favourite since being a kid.
So does she do any alternative with that? Like, have you?
She won't tell
you had
me
the Gordon
how she
Ramsay?
does it.
Have you had the Gordon Ramsay? You've been to Singapore, or is it Bread? I think that's Ramsay's restaurant.
Right,
and
not
they do a
actually.
mac and cheese there, and it's a short rib mac and cheese.
Oh, I'm going.
I just think about it and it makes me hungry. So that's one of my. That I love mac and cheese too. There's nothing wrong.
That's awesome,
with
is
that.
it? If you go to the States, they do it in every single restaurant. They do it everywhere.
Yeah,
it's
I
very
know.
addictive.
Yeah, and that's and you keep wanting to eat it.
Yeah,
So, do you want to drink by any chance?
I'm good.
So, is there when you travel? You mentioned earlier about how hard it is to keep in track with keeping healthy.
Yeah.
Because it is, especially when you go to an airport and you're sitting waiting, and there's all these. You get different time. So it is quite difficult. Is there something that you particularly like eating when you're trying to keep a health regime as well?
I find it much easier to eat healthy when I come to Australia. On a race in America or England, it's the takeaway foods, or it's much harder to get healthy food when you're on the run, on the move.
Yeah.
Favourite food, if I go back to my mum, obviously the mac and cheese is my favourite dish, but she cooks me generally most days there when I'm training and healthy, like salmon or fish and vegetables and all that type of stuff. She makes it taste good, so eating my greens is easier when my mum's around.
Yeah, because she's cooking them as well. There'll be no dessert. So do you find that you've been away a lot of I'm assuming, your childhood compared to most people? Where you have to actually, do you find you had to trust certain people, or did your parents think it was okay that there were people in the motorsporting industry that would be looking after you, or it was just I can look after this?
From karting, I was always with my dad. Formula Ford, parents were there most of the time, but then when I went overseas, it was kind of going out on my own and packing my bag and leaving. So 2007, I left the UK from being there full time. Although I raced in Asia and stuff, I was always going back home. Not living with my parents then, but I lived in Silverstone. But when I left in 2007, I never actually went back to the UK after that. Lived in America and Australia and spent a lot of time in Asia. You're always with a different group of people, different teams and different personnel. So, it was... You sort of grew up pretty quick then. Learned how to wash my own clothes and make my own mac and cheese and stuff like that.
I'm assuming you've met some interesting people in your time, whether it be a driver or a team owner or something like that. Who has been the most interesting person that you've met in the...
I think yourself, JP.
Is there someone that where you've met, you thought, geez, that person actually has had some impact on the way that you outlook or the way that you see life?
I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of successful and very interesting people. I think much more than if I just stayed in England and I'd just be in a small circle. And most people, working class life, just probably circulate with the same 20 people. But because I'm always travelling, different teams, different sponsors, coaching successful businessmen and kids and their families and a few different girlfriends along the way. So I think what I've tried to do is, I couldn't really pinpoint any one person in particular, but to evolve and become the person I have. And I'm definitely not the person I want to be yet, but I've just learned a little bit from all the successful people and the nice people and honest, trying to take certain traits from a certain, people that I've met along the way to try and shape who I want to become. It's definitely helped.
We that's soft because you didn't give me a name, but I noticed you raced in and I'm going to bring up a name. So you raced in Jackie Chan's race team.
Yes.
I'm just guessing you didn't meet Jackie Chan, but
no, he came to the race I wasn't there for. But it was good. It was like the people around me had met him, and it was good to have that association. Yeah, we were quite successful with that team. They went on to win Le Mans. Actually, the one I had a choice to drive with them or drive with a different team, a French team. At that moment, I chose the French team, and we had a DNF, and Jackie Chan DC Racing went on to win the race. So that
my God,
that was one of those. That was the wrong path to take.
That's your elusive unicorn that you still will be going for. I mean, I see it in motorsport where there's lots of, it is a money sport, and team owners, there's some very interesting cats as team owners.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's really interesting just seeing how they are. And your view of it is you learn something from each and every one. It's exactly how I feel. Yeah. What is it that you think is a crucial part about being successful? What do you think the number one trait is?
I think it's like the Nike quote, just do it. The successful people, whether it's racing, business or whatever I see, are the people who they might not be the smartest, they might not be the most talented, but they're the people who get off their butts and do it. They just do it, and if they're not successful, they don't give up. They just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and you definitely... Someone said to me when I was a kid, if I can't 100% remember the saying, but if you aim for the stars, you'll reach the top of the hills, something like that. So if you aim high, you're going to end up...
If you aim for the stars, you'll reach the sky?
Something like that. That's the one. But what it meant...
I like if you aim for the stars, you'll reach the hill. Well, the fucking hills. Car can take me to the hill. But yeah, okay, something fucking hard. But anyway...
Have goals, aim high, and you're going to get somewhere close to running.
Yeah, that's so true. I 100% agree with that. And there is a big part about just doing it. And I get in trouble, probably with the digital team, for just fucking do it. And then worry about how we're going to formulate that afterwards.
Yeah, you've just got to do these things and chase your goals. And if you have a big goal, you have to set the baby steps along the way to reach the goal. You just got to get out there and get it going and start and take a risk.
Yeah, 100. Take a risk, and I agree with that totally. When you were growing up, what was the most difficult challenge you had to overcome?
Ooh,
I think you're still growing up too, so this can be any period of time.
In the beginning for racing, definitely the financial challenge was a big one to overcome. Yeah, it's probably the
money.
biggest
A motorsport for you, it's been money.
money. I think for most drivers, it's the money.
Yeah, I see it all the time. I wish I could give people money so they could follow a dream. Because you see that it gets harder and harder.
Yeah, but I think again, with that, what we were just talking about earlier, if you don't give up, and even if you don't have the cash to go racing, like there's a young driver here, Luke King, that I see turning over every stone to try and make things happen. Harry Jones, for example. The drivers that work hard. Josh Burden, an Australian driver now, who's a factory Toyota driver, racing for KCMG, professional, getting paid now, and he's making a good living out of it. Very good driver, had no funds, but just never gave up. Just started instructing, working for Mercedes days in Australia, and just doing everything you can possible, and never giving up over a long period. You're going to get you are going to become, as long as you've got some talent. If you don't give up, you're definitely going to get somewhere on the motorsport ladder.
Just don't give up. That's pretty clear.
Yep.
If you were doing what you were doing, what would you be doing? If you weren't doing what you're doing, which, let's face it, you're driving and you're getting to drive, and it's just enough for a living. I mean, you're probably just getting through as a driver, but it'd be a lot better to have more drives. That all comes with more money and bringing more sponsorship. It's pretty clear that's how it works. If you weren't doing what you're doing, what would it be?
I've been asked that question quite a lot over the years, and I've never had a good answer. But I'd like to think I would be doing something in the snow, like a skier or something.
Have you ever skied before?
Yeah, I love to ski.
Oh,
I've skied 4 times, but I love it. On snow.
People ask me, if you weren't doing what you're doing, if I wasn't doing what I was doing, what would I be doing? I'd be racing F1. It would be the best thing in the world.
Yeah.
That is an amazing lifestyle.
It is, yeah.
And if you're good and you're performing well, it's like anything it's like life. If something's performing well, it will be shone, and if it's not, then you have to reevaluate what you're doing.
Yeah.
So for me, that's an easy one.
Yep.
What did you wish you'd known now when you first started?
How to drive a racing car efficiently. I think if I knew what I knew now, back in my first or second years of racing, say you had an ex-F1 dad like Rosberg or Verstappen, and they could pass down their knowledge of how to find sponsors, the business, how to drive a racing car, how to communicate with team owners, and people might be able to give you opportunities in the sport. I think it would have made a huge difference. Yeah, you could have jumped up a few steps much earlier in my career. And
do you think that's possible? Like, what you've learnt to applications, but I guess, working out how to do a sponsorship proposal.
I think so. I think so, yeah. I think if you've got a good mentor, I've had a few people mentor me along the lines, which has helped. I think if you've, say for example, Keke Rosberg his father was champion in the late 70s. Rosberg Jr. was champion a few years ago with Mercedes. I think, if you can pass down knowledge and introduce the good contacts, and I think you can have a much more efficient, streamlined way to becoming a Formula 1 driver, for example. I think if you've got somebody in your corner that knows the business inside out and has succeeded themselves, I think that's a big help.
Hence why that's what you're seeing.
You're seeing a lot of second generation drivers come through with F1 fathers and F1 champion fathers.
Yeah, correct. And now I saw something the other day, Leclerc's having it looks like his brother might be racing too.
Okay. Yeah. No, you see that a lot.
So there's another one in the mix as well.
I think it's in the genes a bit, but you can be the best driver in the world, and if you don't get the opportunities, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, doesn't matter.
You need both.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So this is a more philosophical question. If there was one thing that you could do that would have an impact on the world, what would it be?
Ooh, tough questions, JP.
Like, no one said world peace yet. We've had no food waste. We've had some interesting things, but it could literally be like, if you could come back and have some actual control of an outcome of something that would make the world a better place, like cheaper to drive Formula One, or whatever the process is. I mean, it can be whatever you want it to be.
Don't know. What would you do, JP? What would be your thing? What would you change for a better world?
That's a good question.
It's a tough one.
Actually,
because there's so many things.
No one's actually asked me for it. I mean, I think, and I'm in retail, so one of the biggest things I see is the waste of food.
Yeah.
And I'm not a greenie by any stretch of the imagination, but I really believe there's got to be better ways for us to be able to stop the waste of food.
So when you say waste of food, what do you mean? Because you're obviously...
Like the landfill, like for product, we put use by dates on products because of law, but the reality is these products don't need use by dates, or some do. Don't get me wrong, but that's my wife. Like, you eat things so far out of date. It's like, you smell it. If it doesn't smell off, it's usually fine to eat. But we have all these rules and regulations, which means we throw out a lot of food.
Yeah. Okay.
The producers and farmers, they're in the same boat because we've trained people to have perfect looking apples and perfect looking oranges. When one comes with speckles or is funny shape, they don't want to buy it. And a retailer's at fault for that.
Right.
So
where does that go? Into the
landfill.
The trash. Okay.
It might be going back into the farm, pushed back into the farm, or like for us, like the waste that we get from food from in stores is quite low in the shrinkage percent. Like, it's in the scheme of things, but when you put that all together, it's far too high. We're throwing away way too much, and there's a lot of people missing out on. Especially
if you think there's starving people in the world.
Well, correct, and the reality is there's billions of starving people, and we've only got 7 billion people on the planet. We're talking hundreds of millions of tons of landfill every year, and that's Australia alone.
It's amazing.
So if you could somehow get that where it becomes somewhere where someone less fortunate can get it, I think it'd be...
Which must be possible, mustn't it? We're in 2020 and there's still human beings starving in the world.
Correct.
It seems like if every human put their mind to it, that could be avoided.
Well, very easily avoided. You're exactly right. But we in our regulatory way, we have all these rules and regulations in place. You have to put this. It has to be like marked down, or you can't. We can't even give food bank past use by date.
Really?
And you're talking canned products, packets of chips, like all this stuff that is, you can eat packet. I've eaten them months and months after use by date. It's just a smell. For me, it's a smell test. So for me, I would work on.
Is that just within Australia, or is that the same in
worldwide?
Other countries?
It would be a bigger problem elsewhere.
So you can't donate it to starving people or homeless.
Yeah, well, we do things that are in date. That's fine, but it's when they're out of. So if they're out by use by date but fine to eat. That's tonic water. That's Red Bull. Yeah. That's what I would do. And so is this your way of not actually giving me an answer?
It's just too many things that I'd like to improve.
But it's one. So I'm gonna ask you again.
Okay, to stop famine.
Okay, so there you go. The one thing that you'd have an impact on is stop famine, and that's revolving, making sure people are fed, and it's a scary part to think that.
I think I grew up in England with Live Aid and seeing a few of the concerts and Comic Relief in England to stop the starvation in Africa and stuff. So that's always stayed with me. So I'm not smart enough to know how I could fix it, but if I could, that would be something I'd go with.
So
for sure.
to me, everything counts, and it's a little bit frightening how the wealth of the planet is controlled and owned by very few people, and don't get me wrong, those people are putting back, and they are, the Gates Foundation, all that is going back into helping things for good reasons. I'm not saying they're not doing anything. It's a frightening thing.
Yeah, the problem still exists. So
the problem definitely still exists. Yeah, and I guess, it's like anything in life. Like if it's what they say. If you don't have it, then you want it. And at what stage is you all even? I think that's communist, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think we're a bit past that. So here's one for you. If you died, and if you died and come back as a board game, what board game would that be? Now, to buy yourself some time, you can ask me. I said I'd come back as Scrabble.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a good one.
So you never know what you're going to get.
I think I'd come back as Hungry Hippos.
Hungry Hippo.
I used to love that game.
Yeah. So that's your favourite game. So you were like madly whacking.
Trying to eat as many balls as possible. That came out wrong. That definitely came out wrong.
I got a hunch I'm going to use that piece for a bit. Oh, that is so funny. So in the, we're going to be wrapping it up now. James is actually flying. So tomorrow you're coaching someone in Sydney, I believe?
Yeah, after Sydney tonight, Eastern Creek tomorrow. Yeah, the coaching that I do along with my racing, coaching, Garth Warden Racing, some of their prototypes they've got. It should be a fun day. Oh,
awesome. So, I do appreciate you coming in. It's been great having a chat. I mean, not many people, you don't hear that much long format stuff from race car drivers and people that are doing this for a living, which is a tough, you've clearly heard that it's a tough industry to be involved with.
It is. You have good times and bad times. You can have a few good years, but to keep it going for, how long has I been going now? 15 years in total. And it's hard to keep it going for 15 years, and hopefully I can keep it going for another 10 years and keep enjoying the fruits of the sport.
Well, we wish you all the best, especially for the 24-hour Le Mans.
Thank you very much.
I would, it's even me that's an average driver. I'd love to go. It'd be definitely amazing to be in that event. You never know. We might be in the same car.
That would be good, mate. Yeah. Good luck with your Australian prototype series in 2020. Hopefully you can win some more races and some more pole positions and
take
one
out
day
the championship.
Yeah. You should have won it last year.
Yep.
Before, what was it, the last race you had an issue with the car?
Yeah, I think Macros is the one that cost me, to be honest.
For sure.
Macros wiping out my rear tyre at Sydney, that was painful.
I missed that 0. One, but you've told me a few times.
Yeah, I've told Jason a few times. 2020, the great numbers, they look good. It's been an interesting start to the year for Australia. And
when's your first race? When's the first race of the Aussie prototype?
I think it's in March. So we've got a bit of time. We had that Little Age Le Mans race and we're pretty excited for this season. It looks like it's going to be interesting. I think it'll be a more building season, but we just want more cars on the grid. Reality is different groups, more cars. That's racing.
A few of the rounds, like the Bend, the first race at the Bend in the Aussie Prototype Series, had a huge grid, didn't it? 25 or plus?
29.
29. Wow, it's good to see radicals and Wolf CN cars mixed in with all different types.
Well, we should be driving together. It's ridiculous we're not, and I would love to see the LMP3s.
Yeah, which is eligible, right? Yeah, you can race them in your series. So.
We can, but apparently they don't want to race with anyone else, and I said, that's okay, you can race 4 cars and see how that is. Maybe they'll get 3 cars and the drivers will get first, second or third. I mean, the reality is, I want to race with people. And
you just want grids with lots of numbers on them, right? You want to be racing against big.
Everyone comes back. You don't come back when you're ahead. It's a bit. I haven't had that experience much, but you come back and you're always ahead the whole time. But when you're talking about racing other people, like whether you're at the front, middle, back, if you're racing someone, you're racing someone, and that's what makes it so exciting. And that's the part that I love. So,
and the good thing about the prototype series, it's a bit like WEC now with LMP1 and LMP2. Like you can see some of the cars are quicker in the corners, some of the cars are a bit quicker on the straights, so you get overtaking, and it's actually really good to watch. Obviously, I've been there and coached yourself on occasions, and coached Jason Macros and a few of the other guys in the series, and it's always good racing to watch. The fastest car is not always going to be the guy who wins the race, and it's interesting when you see a Wolf with a Peugeot Turbo Wolf powering past everyone around, on the straights, and then you see you and your CN Wolf flying up the inside later on the brakes. And
Honda 2-litre.
Yeah, it's some really good racing to watch.
Yeah, so we love it, and we want to make sure that that's the prototype series for Australia, because the reality is us radicals and any other prototype looking car, we should all be on the same grid and racing together. Everyone wins in that everyone wins in that. So that's what we're hoping for this year. I wish you well for this year for whatever you with your coaching and your race. Hopefully, you're basically doing coaching and you're trying to sneak as much driving in as possible. That's pretty much what you've been doing for the last 15 years, and I appreciate you coming in here, and I'd like to thank you for all the coaching you've given me. That's
Thanks, JP.
definitely got me a lot faster.
It's been good to be here, it's been good to be involved, and it's good to see you progressing with your racing career and doing as well as you are.
Sweet. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, buddy.